Hello YouTube, Dave here again. We are very much into the holiday season for 2019, so I thought I would do a video just suggesting a few gift ideas for either the gamers in your life, the people that might be starting or developing an interest in gaming, or people that you think might develop an interest in the hobby and you want to try to find ways to sort of ease them into it. So we're going to go through some options here today, including things like accessories, some books, some box sets. There's actually quite a bit of great stuff that has come out in 2019. It's actually been a really good year overall for tabletop RPGs. So there's some great stuff to go through. But first, just a couple of like gaming at the gaming table type of stuff. But for anyone who is a fan of Dungeons & Dragons or RPGs in general that also have an interest in comics, there are a couple of different options that I thought might be worth bringing up for them. So the first one is going to be this here. This is the Baldur's Gate Go for the Eyes collection. So this is 100 pages of D&D comics, and what this is it's actually the first installments for each of the major D&D comic series lines that have followed the major story arcs for the D&D brand, 5th edition brand in particular. So we have like the Evil at Baldur's Gate, we have the Shadows of the Vampire, Frost Giants, Fury. It's the first installment for all of these issues, and there's just a lot of cool stuff in here. It features Minsc, the ranger from the Baldur's Gate PC games from back in the 90s, as well as his miniature gigantic space hamster Boo. And these are all really great comics. They also all have trades out, which is the collected entire series of these comics. So if you have a fan or know someone who's into D&D, maybe loves the old Baldur's Gate PC games, then this, I think, will be a great way to sort of introduce them to the comic series. So really great book there. In addition, if you know someone who might be a fan of both Rick and Morty and Dungeons & Dragons, this is going to be a pretty good year for them as well. First up, we have the Rick and Morty versus Dungeons & Dragons. This is the trade for the very first series. They're currently partway through Series 2. But again, for anyone who's a fan of both of these properties, this one is probably my favorite overall of the two. There's a lot of great references here to older products, older like modules, older books. There's just a lot of great stuff in here. So again, for fans of Rick and Morty and or Dungeons & Dragons, this is going to be a great thing to pick up for them. And if they're a fan of Rick and Morty but not necessarily aware of or into D&D, this might be a great way to get them into it. So really awesome gift there. Alright, so up next I want to get into some role-playing books. Again, this was a really good year for RPGs in general, with 2019 seeing quite a few great quality things come out. The first one I actually want to talk about is the second edition of the Pathfinder role-playing game. So Pathfinder has been a very popular RPG since it first released its own rule set back in 2009, I think it was. And just this year they released the updated new rule set, and if you're interested in an RPG that has lots of customization, lots of options for player character backgrounds, races, classes, this is the edition for you. So if anyone might be interested, or they're fans of the original Pathfinder rule set, but maybe they're starting to kind of get away from it, or they're looking for something fresh, then there is the Pathfinder 2nd edition core rulebook. So this is great for anyone who may be, again, sort of interested or looking to move on from the first version of Pathfinder, or for anyone who's playing the 2nd edition game but doesn't currently have their own rulebook. So again, there's a lot of great customization options in here. And one of the great things about this version in particular, this game in particular, is that you can have multiple characters of the same like ancestry or class that feel different from one another. So in the current game that I'm running, I actually had 2 players request to be sorcerers and another character that requested to play a wizard. And so they wanted me to make the characters for them because they didn't have the rule books themselves at the time. And honestly, especially with the two sorcerers, I was able to make them feel very different from one another, since they had the ability to draw from different spell lists, the different backgrounds, and the different races or ancestries, as they're referred to here, with all the options that are included in there. I just think that this is a really great system. So again, if you know somebody who might be maybe looking for something sort of new and fresh when it comes to RPGs, then this is the book to get them. Now, let's just say that they already have the second edition Pathfinder or core rulebook and the bestiary, if they're running the game in particular themselves. There are some other books that came out as well this year. So for your game master, if they are running the second edition Pathfinder, a good resource for them might be the Pathfinder Lost Omens World Guide. This includes a pull-out poster map that's double-sided, has a couple of different art styles on it there for if you prefer more of a first edition style of artwork, they have that, or if you like a more sort of realistic look, they have that as well. But this is a great resource. It gives you all kinds of useful information that can really help you flesh out your campaigns. So if you are in a group, your game master doesn't have this, this is a great book to pick up for them. On the other side of that table, or on the other side of the screen, I guess you could say, we have something maybe for players of Pathfinder 2nd Edition that already have the core rulebook. There is the Lost Omens Character Guide. So this has updated options for all the ancestries from the core rulebook, as well as 3 new races, including the Lizard Folk, Hobgoblins, and then we have the Leshies, which are sort of a plant-based creature. And I actually really love the Leshies. So let me just see if I can find them here. It was actually the one that I was expecting to like the least, but I have to say that I just love the design of them. They can be very different from one another based on the type of plant that they're derived from. So you can have like a fungus one, you can have one based off vines, or my favorite, you have the Gourd Leshy, whose head is mainly decorative but functional from the point of view that they can store stuff in it. So again, just some really, really cool stuff there, and great for players of the Pathfinder 2nd Edition rule set. Alright, moving on to Paizo's other major RPG, we're going to look at Starfinder. So there were 2 major hardcover books that came out this year. The first was the Alien Archive 3, which regrettably at this point I still don't have. But the other book, and the one that I really think is worth getting for players and game masters alike, is the Character Operations Manual. So this is the first major player expansion for the Starfinder RPG, and it comes out, I think, at a really good time. The Starfinder role-playing game's been out for a couple of years now, and this is a really good expansion to that. It includes new alternate class features for all of the existing core rulebook classes, as well as new player character options for all of the races that were available in the core rulebook, as well as some new backgrounds, and 3 new character classes. We have the Biohacker, which is probably my favorite because it involves them using injection-based technology. As you can see, like the little syringes and stuff on their belt, and you can use those to either boost your allies, or you can use it to impede your enemies. You have the Vanguard. The name slipped my consciousness for a second there, but you have the Vanguard, which is kind of an unarmed type character that builds up entropic energy based on the amount of damage that they deal or that they absorb, and they can harness that and send it back in terms of extra damage on attacks, or they can use it to shield blows. It's actually a pretty good versatile class. And then you have the Witch Warper, which essentially can bend the fabric of reality and summon little tiny pockets of other dimensions into their own to create these environmental effects that can, again, create like damage opponents, or can create like difficult terrain. It's just overall a really, really cool class. They have their spellcasting class as well, so they have their whole spell list in here as well. So again, a very great expansion to the Starfinder role-playing game. So if you know someone that you want to buy a gift for and they're into Starfinder. If they don't have this, this is what I would highly, highly recommend, because this is a absolutely amazing book. Alright, and then lastly, we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. So there were a few different books that came out this year, but some of them were kind of okay at best. Now, overall, 2019 was a fantastic year for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Wizards of the Coast really, really turned the ship around from what I think was going on last year, where perhaps success sort of got to them, and the corporate greed machine sort of took over a little bit, I think, last year, with a ton of product, with over half of the year, nearly 2/3 of the year's releases, all coming out on the same day in November. This year things were much more spaced out, and I think the quality overall of the books that were released were significantly better. The first one that I'm going to recommend is probably my favorite book overall for the year. We are going to be taking a look here at the Eberron Rising from the Last War. This is the Eberron campaign setting for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Now, this is the Game Store exclusive cover, but there is the regular version as well. I've done a review of it. I've shown the regular version off, but I thought I would just show the Hobby Store exclusives for these ones, because, again, if you're looking to purchase some gifts for friends, for the holiday season and they're into gaming, the first place I would recommend going to would have to be your local game store to see, what kind of great things that you can find there. And again, if you know someone who's into, especially like the alternate covers of the different 5th edition products that have come out, this is my favorite alternate cover so far of the ones that they've done. It's just a really, really beautiful looking cover. And it's just an overall fantastic campaign setting. The Eberron world has been one of my favorites ever since I first started collecting it back in the days of 3.5 D&D, so we're looking at like 2003 through 2008. Really love this world, and it's a great setting, even for beginners, because you can really run any kind of game that you want in this world. It accommodates every type of campaign that you could possibly imagine, which is, again, really, really fantastic. So if you know someone who's into 5th edition D&D, this is a great addition to their collection and would make a fantastic gift. This version of the cover or the regular version, it really doesn't matter, because what's inside is, again, just a wonderful, wonderful product. Alright, and then we have some adventure books. So I'm going to show the two that I think are the better options of the three that came out. There was the Tyranny of Dragons story, which was originally 2 books combined into one. But really, that's only a great purchase for someone who doesn't have the originals, because even though they incorporated errata and stuff into it, the overall product really could have benefited from a few alterations that just wasn't made. However, we do have 2 really great adventures that came out, and I'm going to start with Baldur's Gate: Descent into Avernus. So this one here has a group of individuals conspiring to plunge the city of Baldur's Gate into the first layer of the 9 Hells. The player characters are able to, spoiler, they're able to prevent that pretty early on in the adventure, but as it turns out, something similar had already happened to the city of Eltriel. So that had been absorbed, and the players then go into the 9 Hells to try to save that city from permanently being absorbed into that plane. So it's a really cool adventure. Going through Avernus itself is a very, very interesting concept. The level range is a bit lower than what I would have expected for this type of story, but it makes up for it by giving the players opportunities to essentially create alliances with either other powerful devils or demon lords to sort of do some of the heavy lifting for them. So there's a lot of great role-playing opportunities in here. There's a lot of great combat encounters in here, and it has the diabolical machines, which, if I can find it real quick, I might not be able to, but the diabolical machines are also pretty cool. because they're essentially like they're vehicles. They're basically vehicles in D&D 5th edition, and I'm probably not going to be able to find it. Oh no, here we go. So you got some different options here, but my favorite would have to be letter A here, which is A or B are basically like infernal motorcycles. So one viewer actually kind of referred to this as sort of Dungeons and Dragons meets Mad Max with the different vehicles and stuff. And that just sounds pretty awesome, in my opinion. So this is actually a really great adventure to get anyone that's into 5th edition D&D. That said, however, my favorite adventure book that came out this year would have to be The Ghosts of Saltmarsh. This, again, is the alternate cover. This is the Hobby Store exclusive cover. Again, it's my not-so-subtle way of trying to steer people towards their local game shops instead of things like Amazon or online bookstores. But Ghosts of Saltmarsh is another compilation book. It's a collection of previously released adventures for like the D&D basic rule set, as well as some Dragon Magazine adventure or Dungeon Magazine adventures from the days of 3rd edition and 3.5. What's great about this book is it's a collection, it's a compilation of adventures, so you can run the chapters separately if you wish, so you don't actually have to run all of them together as one cohesive story. Or you can do that. So this rather over top of, say, Tales from the Yawning Portal, this is a really, really great way of reprinting old adventures, but making them thematically fit together in a way that you can actually tell a story with. So Tales from the Yawning Portal was a bunch of dungeon crawls, which were pretty much kind of standalone. Not that they were necessarily bad, there were some great adventures in there, but you didn't necessarily want to run all of them one right after the other, because it would feel a bit redundant and kind of a slog, I think, with all those different dungeons. But there's a lot of really great adventures reprinted in here. Again, it's able to tell a fantastic story. You get a little bit of a campaign setting, a bit of information as well, which is great. And just overall, in my opinion, hands down, the best adventure book released for 5th edition to this date, going back for 2014 all the way to now. This is honestly my favorite of the entire collection of books that have been released. There's been a lot of great ones, but just the ability to cherry pick this in your own homebrewed games, or the option to have a really cool story that you can run out of this book, just makes it, again, hands down my absolute favorite. So this is, if you could only get one adventure book this year for someone, I would recommend this one first. I don't think you're going to go wrong with necessarily either of the options here, but this one I think will have the wider range of use for it. So there we go there. All right, so we had a bunch of books, as well as some comics there. So those are sort of some of the higher end things that you can get, but there are some cheaper items that you can pick up as well, some great accessories that have come out for the various RPGs as well. So the first one that I want to look at here is actually tied to one of the books I just finished talking about, and this is the Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus Dice and Miscellany set. So this here is the collectible dice set for D&D. It's tied to the Descent into Avernus story, but unlike previous dice sets, which have been average or mediocre at best, underwhelming at times, or even just flat out way too expensive for what you were getting, this rights that ship, which again was sort of the theme of Wizards of the Coast and D&D 5th edition this year, was sort of getting things back on track, actually seemingly listening to consumer input, and instead of just the dice set, you get a nice box that comes with them. It's felt lined, you can use it as a dice rolling tray. There's also a bunch of extra artwork cards, maps and stuff, all included in this box set, or in this dice set as well. So this is a very, very worthwhile product for what you pay for it. I think it's the best accessory that I think Wizards of the Coast has put out for 5th edition. At the very least, it is hands down the best of the dice sets that have come out with all the extras and stuff. It actually feels like you're getting your money's worth, which I really honestly can't say for any of the other dice sets that they've put out so far, going back over the last couple of years. So really fantastic set there. Alright, up next we have just some smaller accessories here as well. So for the Pathfinder and Starfinder role-playing game, we have all kinds of little card decks that you can use to enhance your game or help out with it. So we have things like condition cards. These aren't necessarily new to this year, but again, something very, very useful to have. You have them for the Starfinder game as well as the Pathfinder role-playing game. And Pathfinder 2nd edition uses a lot of conditions, and with different values that impose different penalties to whatever they're associated with. So this is a very, very good pickup for anyone that is playing or into 2nd edition Pathfinder. Same goes for the Starfinder one. It's great to have that as well. We also have a Starfinder rules reference deck. So there's some great things in here as well. Starship combat, different rules for like flanking, utilization of skills, movement types. There's just a lot of great stuff in here as well. So for anyone who's into Starfinder, this is a great pickup as well. And for both games, I couldn't find one of my deck boxes since I have the cards sleeved and stored somewhere else. But we have the critical hit decks and critical fumble decks for both Starfinder and Pathfinder 2nd edition. All these card sets are fantastic, and I feel like they really help keep people's interest in every single action that happens in combat. So with my Pathfinder game, whenever an attack roll is made, people are sort of anticipating what the dice roll is going to be, because if it's a natural 1, you get the draw from the fumble deck. If it's a natural 20, you get the draw from the crit deck. And there's just some really, really cool stuff in there. Again, I think these are great accessories. They're on the cheaper side of things, which again is great as well. Fantastic things to pick up for fans of those respective games. And then we have some different types of maps and things that we can also pick up. So 5th edition D&D released the Tactical Maps Reincarnated. This takes 20 previously released maps in things like modules or some of the adventures that they've released, particularly from the days of like 3.5 and 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons. There's some of the ones that came with the like the gigantic the dragons. I don't know if I can't remember if the red dragon one's in here or not, but like the white dragon one. There's just some really awesome stuff in here, and maps overall are just fantastic because just having these things can spark someone's imagination and give them some ideas of things that they can do. You could look at a map and say that, I think I could come up with some really cool encounters for this area. And that's the beauty of these things. So something like this can be useful for any gamer out there, regardless of what system they're playing. These maps are always going to be great. So we have those. We also have things like the Pathfinder flip mats. This is the Ambush Site multi-pack. So this has 2 double-sided maps that have different features and locations. That again can be very useful for coming up with some cool ideas with. I've actually recently managed to use this map with one of my D&D games, and there's just some, again, endless possibilities that you have there as well. The next thing I'm going to show off is, I guess, a little bit of I don't want to say a little bit of a cheat, but we have the Pathfinder. This is the Pathfinder 2nd edition Fall of Plagstone flip mat. And the reason I want to show this off is because this can be bundled with the Pathfinder 2nd edition Fall of Plagstone Adventure. So these actually combined make, I think, a really great gift for someone getting into Pathfinder 2nd edition. Mainly because this is a standalone adventure and an introductory adventure to the Pathfinder Second Edition system. So it's something that it's a one purchase. So, for example, you could get someone an installment of the Adventure Path. Right now, they're doing the Age of Ashes storyline, but those are all meant to be run one after the other. Whereas this is a single standalone adventure, and it's a really great one on top of it. There's some great role-playing opportunities, some great investigation sections, as well as some really cool combats. There's just a little bit of everything in this book, and you can get the really useful double-sided flip mat to go with that as well. So again, this, for anyone that's into Pathfinder, second edition, again, makes a really fantastic gift. So finally, we have some box sets, and this was actually a very busy year for RPG-related box sets, especially from Wizards of the Coast for the 5th edition D&D game. So the first one that I actually want to show here was the first one that was released earlier this year. I think it came out in April of 2019, and this is the Dungeons & Dragons Stranger Things starter set. So this is what I consider to be a good gift for someone who is a fan of both Stranger Things and Dungeons & Dragons, or even someone who is just a big fan of the Stranger Things Netflix series. At this point in time, I still haven't actually watched it yet, so I can't really put myself in that category. I know that as a standalone D&D product, I don't know if I'd really recommend this, but it's not meant to be a standalone product. It is meant to appeal to fans of the series, of the Netflix show. So if you're falling in that category, you know someone who falls in that category, this I think would make a really great gift. So this comes with a set of 6 polyhedral dice. These are the same dice that came with the original 5th edition starter set. 5 pre-made characters based off of the characters that the kids played on the show itself. You have your rule book, and then you have your adventure book, which is sort of a shorter adventure overall, but it's done, the presentation is really, really well done. The writing of it is sort of hit or miss. There's some really great sections, like the maze section I actually really like, but then there's a little bit of ex machina or pet NPCs. There's one NPC in particular that is essentially invincible, and even though it gives suggestions on what happens if the characters attack, I think it just would have been better to have had the person either just teleport away or have them statted out, but instead of just letting them be immune to all damage, get multiple attacks, and then always hit for critical damage. But overall, it's the adventure itself is still fairly well done. I know this is kind of maybe not the best endorsement for this product, but I think it's I want to be realistic about, how I feel about this overall. Like I said, as a standalone, I don't know if I'd recommend this, but again, for fans of Stranger Things, this is, I think, going to be absolutely awesome. It also includes 2 versions of the Demogorgon miniature from this. So this was the monster from season 1 of the show. So you get that as well, which again makes for a pretty cool little collectible. And again, I think fans of the show are going to love this. So, which is again what they're going after. So if you know someone that's into that, then I think this would be a great pickup. All right, up next we have what I consider to be the best D&D box set that Wizards of the Coast has released for any of the versions of D&D that they have been at the helm for, and that is the 5th edition D&D Essentials Kit. This is basically the brand new starter set for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, and it just does everything better than the original, in my opinion. And I really did come around to love the original starter set, but I gotta be honest, this is just way, way better. So we'll start off with the fact that it just includes so much more stuff and justifies the price tag that comes along with it. This is a $25 US product or a $34 Canadian product, but you're getting your money's worth here. So what you get in this, you get a full set of 11 dice. So you get 2 d20s, 4d6, a d4, a d8, a D10, percentile D10, and a D12. You also get a double-sided map. So this shows both sides of the map. There's not two maps in there. It's just the one map, but it shows the town of Phandalin, where is sort of the base of operations, as well as the surrounding area. So it has that. You have 4 sheets. You have, I think it's like 10 sheets, or 9 or 10 sheets of game aid cards, which include things like the different conditions, NPCs, magic items, some of the quests that you can go on. It is a very cool resource there as well, and it comes with a foldable box that you can put everything in, store them in. Really great stuff there. The characters are actually created by the players themselves. So it comes with blank character sheets, and the player's book has rules for character creation, which I think is something that just again puts this head and shoulders above the other sets, which are all pre-made characters. It comes with a game master or a dungeon master screen, and the adventure is also really well done in my opinion. It's sort of a series of like short quests that can sort of be combined into one overarching storyline. But what's great about it is that the scenarios are designed to take, I'd say, anywhere from like 1 to 3 hours each. So you can, kind of get through, 1 or 2 of them per session, depending on, how long the adventure itself is. Some of them you might even be able to get like 2 or 3 things done. I just think it's a really, really great structure. And again, something that I'd like to see more of is just the opportunity for the players to sort of pick and choose how they proceed through the story. So really, really great stuff here. And again, hands down, I'd have to say the best box set that Wizards of the Coast has put out for the D&D brand. One last set here to go through for Dungeons & Dragons, and this is the Dungeons & Dragons versus Rick and Morty set. So this is sort of similar to the Stranger Things starter set in that this is really geared towards fans of Rick and Morty. So if you know someone who's big into Rick and Morty, and you want to get them into tabletop RPGs, then this might be a great way to sort of get them into it. I know one of the more recent episodes of Season 4 had some sort of D&D light references in it, with them going to like this fantasy world kind of idea. But again, this is a great way to get people into RPGs if they're fans of the animated show here. The contents are actually very similar to what we got with the Essentials kit. It is lacking the game aid cards or the little box to put them in, but it does come with a DM screen, a set of 11 dice. So again, you got your 2d20, 46, and your percentile dice that you're not normally getting in the previously released sets. The rule book and the adventure book are sort of like written by, the adventure book is written by Rick, and you can sort of see that in the way that it describes things. Like it has a very Rick feel to it. Sort of an old school kind of gamer type thing who just wants to get to the encounters over the story, which in retrospect may not be the best message to send people that might be getting into this for the first time, but I think it's done tongue-in-cheek enough that you can sort of play it off for the obvious like joke or reference to sort of the old school mentality that you sometimes see. You also have the rulebook, which is peppered with observations by Rick. My favorite still has to be the stats, his explanation of the stats, which, like, strength is good for fighters and hitting stuff, dexterity is good for thieves or archers, intelligence is a must for wizards, and then you have, like, charisma, which he refers to as the dumb stat and no one ever needs it. We are back to pre-made characters, which is a little bit disappointing, especially considering the fact that it's just essentially carbon copies of the original 5th edition starter set characters. So you have the 2 different types of fighter. You have the folk hero, which is the one wearing light armor and using a bow as their primary weapon. And then you have the noble fighter who doesn't look to be wearing any armor and uses a big 2-handed weapon. I think this set really would have benefited from having those characters be, instead of the ones based off of the basic rule set, we'll just let them be a ranger and barbarian. That's sort of my one major nitpick. with this is that it just, again, just copies those exact characters. It does give, like, different artwork, and the sheets do have a little splash of color to them, which is nice. So this is, a good set overall. And if you had to choose between licensed box sets, I would recommend this one over the Stranger Things set, because I think you still get more value out of this one than you do with the Stranger Things one. This also makes a better use of all the creatures that are included in the rulebook versus the Stranger Things one, which reprints most of the enemies from the original D&D 5th edition starter set, but has very few of them in the adventure itself. This one uses those same creatures again as well, but it does a much better job of introducing them and utilizing, like, all of them. So really great stuff here. Again, of the two, I'd recommend this one, but if you're buying for someone who's a fan of one over the other, these are still both worthwhile things to pick up for them. And then lastly, the last one I want to talk about here is actually for Starfinder, and this is the Starfinder Beginner Box. So, Starfinder, I absolutely love the system, and this is a great introductory set for the game itself. It is a stripped down rule system as well. So if you're concerned, like, you want to get some people into Starfinder, but you're concerned that things like the stamina points and, like, starship combat and some of the options might be a little bit overwhelming for them, this is a simplified version of that rule set. So you have, instead of stamina points and hit points, you just have hit points. It streamlines that. There are a couple of the character classes aren't represented here, unfortunately, but you still get some great stuff included in here. You also have the option to choose either pre-made characters or have the option to create your own, which is the sort of the best of both worlds situation there. So again, if you just want to pick up and play immediately, then you can pass out the ready-made characters and begin right away, or you can take a little bit of time, create the characters, go through some stuff here in this set, and eventually work your way towards the hardcover core rulebook. Included in here, you get a 96-page Hero's Handbook, which has the character creation stuff, as well as a sort of choose-your-own adventure introductory thing, which I think is actually a really, really cool idea. I did do a video showing, like, the first couple of options that you had. I didn't want to completely spoil how it goes, but really, really awesome idea. I absolutely love that. You also have a 96-page Game Master's Guide, which includes the introductory adventure and guidelines for creating your own adventures. So it really helps you sort of branch out from what's included here. It also has a set of dice, so it only has 1d6, but you get 7 dice instead of 6 like you had in some of the other sets. So you get a d4, 1d6, a d8, a d10, a percentile d10, a d12, and a d20. It also comes with several sheets of punch-out NPC or character pawns, including creatures for all the things included in the Game Master's Guide, as well as the adventure. So sort of a stand-in or a cheaper alternative to buying miniatures. And I love these pawn sets. So to have them in here is great. You also have bases to put everything on. There's some rules reference cards, as well as a double-sided poster map, which one side is just a blank side that you can draw on. You can use dry erase markers or wet erase markers with these. And then the other side is the location for the very first adventure. So overall, again, it's just some great stuff here, some great options. So again, 2019 was a pretty solid year overall for RPGs. So these are just some suggestions here. There's all kinds of other great little accessories or miniatures that have come out as well, but I could be talking all day about some of the different things there. And if some of the things that came out this year for these, like, major role-playing games weren't covered in this video, it's not that I think that they're necessarily bad ideas. They're just not ones that I would personally fully recommend unless you know someone that specifically wants them. So again, like the Tyranny of Dragons book, it's kind of a hard sell for me to recommend it overall, but if you know someone that doesn't have it, then it might be, or doesn't have the originals, then it might be worth picking up, as well as things like Adventure Path books, which I think are all fantastic for Starfinder and Pathfinder. absolutely great things to have, great stories, really well done. But I wanted stuff that was a bit more self-contained. So to give someone like a book one of an adventure path, kind of, if they like the story, then it kind of puts them in a situation where they have to maybe go out and buy all the other ones. So I just want to stick with more standalone stuff here. But again, some really, really great stuff overall. If you have any suggestions for some great holiday gifts, please feel free to leave that in the comments section below. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Take care.